right, welcome back, everybody. Time for part 3. We went over how to do some basic stuff, right? We went over all of our series on using our tools. We just went over some stuff on candlesticks. Now we're going to get into the real good stuff, how to use those candles to find a trend, which is the number one most important thing when we're trying to chart our assets. Let's get into it. All right, I went heads up with headphones on and everything here, just to try to make sure that I've got everything right. I want this to be perfect for you guys because this is where the rubber meets the road. All right, this is where the real stuff starts to happen. We take that psychology that we know, we take the basics of candlesticks that we know, and we apply this to the chart in order to find the trend, which is the number one most important thing. First, the setup. I am in, as you see, log mode in the corner here. I'm on a monthly time frame. I talked about this last time, right? There's our daily, our weekly, and our monthly with a star beside them, right? Can't miss that. So we've got those three, and I have all three of them up here, right? And I'm going to use all three of them in the next 3 videos here. So I'm going to start on monthly. I always want to start on a high time frame, and I want to work my way down little by little until I find what I need. And right now, what I'm going to look for is the trend. And what are we going to use to find that trend? We're going to use the candles. We're going to use both parts, but first, we're going to start with the candle bodies. All right, so I've grabbed my brush tool here, which is right over here on the left. We talked about this one before. I'm going to use it a lot. I'm also going to pick a nice bright color like this bright green with the back background like this. Stands off really well, and it grabs your eye. And that's why I use the colors that I do, because they catch your eye and kind of remind you of what you're doing, right? If you draw in a very monotone color, sometimes what can happen is you forget what you're doing, but it's exactly why I don't do it, right? It's why I use a bright color. So for trend identification, what we're going to be using is the candle bodies, or where they open and close, like you see on this candle, where they open and close to find our trend and figure out which direction we're going. All right, this is super important, so make sure you pay attention and even watch this video back a couple times if you need to. All right, for uptrends and downtrends and finding the trend in general, there are only 2 trends that exist. It's either an uptrend or it's a downtrend. There's no in between. Now, you'll hear people argue that sideways is a trend, which can be called crabbish because crabs kind of run sideways, you know. That's a thing that I'm not going to argue about. In my opinion, it's more down when that happens because you're not making any money. All right. When things go sideways, you don't make any money, pretty much just sitting on it doing nothing. So I kind of count that as down. Now, obviously, I've drawn it on the chart here. Downtrend equals lower highs and lower lows. Uptrend equals higher lows and higher highs. How do we find those? This is very important. Let's start with downtrends. Now, you may wonder why I started with downtrends. It's because typically things are in downtrends for longer periods of time than they are in uptrends. And uptrends tend to be fun to watch, but tend not to last too long, okay? So it's important to understand that most of the time things look bad and bleak and get people upset. But it's fine because you're probably not going to be in that asset anyway. You're probably going to be looking to buy it somewhere else. Now, I'm going to use the candle bodies, and I'm going to find groups of candles in groups of places where the bodies stopped and started all together, right? And this will create a clump of candles and kind of show us the future going forward. It sounds crazy, but that's kind of the way it works, all right? Right off the bat, what do I see? I see a bunch of candles that open and close right around the same area here, okay? And you could have the same thing right here where these candles start and stop in the same area. They start and stop right here, okay? Do you get what I'm seeing there? All these candle bodies starting and stopping and kind of reversing, going the other way maybe in the same area. Point more so than anything is there's a grouping of candles here. The more I have of these stops and starts in the same area, the stronger that area becomes, okay? And we'll talk about that just a little bit later here as I move on some. So the first thing to remember is, if you remember last time when we talked about candles, we talked about what a doji candle at the bottom represents. Well, here's a doji candle at the bottom. What does that represent? Likely reversal up, and sure enough, we get that reversal up. Now, I'm going to mark some of these spots, and I'm going to do this on the monthly, and as we fine tune a little bit, you'll notice that when we go down to the daily chart where we buy and sell, our stuff is going to be really close to spot on. On a monthly, it's going to be a little looser, a little bit more slippage back and forth, but that's part of the game when you're using a higher time frame to kind of show you the direction, all right? So First, I definitely have a spot down here. I'm unsure about this one because it's only one candle higher. When you're unsure, just move on a little bit. All right, that's the easy thing to remember. Whenever you're unsure of an area, just move forward a little bit and see what else the future holds. All right, so up here, we had another dead flat reversal. So for the record, I have 2 points. I have now what I didn't have before, which is some data. I now have a low and I now have a high. And I'm on my way to figuring out which way the trend is going based on that, okay? Now, I'm going to keep moving from the left to the right because when you're reading charts, you always read from the left to the right. Do not be the person who starts all the way at the current day and says, I know what's going to happen, because technically you haven't looked up anything and you haven't really studied into it yet, and you're probably inaccurate on that. So again, don't be foolish. Make sure that you zoom all the way out, start to the left and read to the right, just like a book, okay? Now, moving on, I have nothing but red candles after this. Red candle, red candle, red candle, right? Kind of sucks. It looked like it was doing well at first, had a low and a high. And then we formed this down here. All right, a lot of candles starting and stopping right around through here. You don't have to be super perfect with this. Just get close right now, okay? But it's very clear right there that we had another low. Problem, this low is lower than the last one. That's not a higher low. That is a lower low. And if it's a lower low, which I will mark now, lower low, well, that's the beginning of a downtrend. Remember that? Downtrend equals lower highs and lower lows. So far, I've made nothing but a lower low. So I'm going to keep reading and see, does that change? If it flips to the good side for me, well, that would be great. So off we go. We have a little move right here. I'm unsure, just like I was unsure back here, but I'm positive right here that that's a dead flat reversal back down. All right, if that's the case, I have a low and a high and a lower low, and our very next move was a high here, but look, that's lower than the last one. That is a lower high. And what you found is 100% a downtrend. Now, why is that important? Because when you're in a downtrend, this is the time when you do not buy. You don't buy. We sell downtrends. We wait for them to finish and then we rebuy when the time is right. But we do not buy in downtrends, because when you buy in downtrends, you're trying to catch a falling knife. It's very important to understand, if you're sitting in the kitchen and you decide to go cook something and you have a knife laying on the counter and you accidentally bump into that knife and slide it off, your first reaction is to do what? Your first reaction is to jump back and step away so that knife doesn't cut you. Your first reaction typically is not to reach and grab that knife as it's trying to fall, because you know what'll happen. You're probably going to get cut. You wait, you watch the knife hit the ground, it spins around sometimes, and then after it's done falling, done spinning around, you reach down and pick that knife up. That same analogy is going to apply to what we're doing on these charts. We've established that we have a downtrend here. We're going to keep reading until we get all the way to the end of it, all right? So after this lower high, I get a move right here, which looks pretty good to me. It's actually a higher low. Higher low. And I want you to do the same thing using the text functions and the call out bubbles that you see me using right now. We've talked about those in the other videos. That's why we talked about those before, because I wanted you to have these tools before you start. So now you have a lower low and a higher low. Remember over here, higher low, higher highs. This is the beginning of an uptrend. So what do we need for a confirmed uptrend? We need this higher high to come in and confirm it, just like we confirmed the downtrend back here. Problem, after that higher low, since you have half of an uptrend, you need that higher high now. What did you get? You got a lower high. Not great. So you had half of an uptrend and half of a downtrend. You have a whole of nothing. Nothing to do here except wait it out and keep watching and looking more to the right. All right, so let's do just that. Let's keep going to the right here. As you see, you have another low come in after this. That's not great. That's called a lower low. Why? It's lower than the last one. There's our last low, and here's our recent low. It's lower than the last one. That's a lower low. And we keep moving. We have a high. Not bad. That's another, though, not great, lower high. And still, as we plug along here, we haven't even found an uptrend yet to buy. We have nothing but downtrends. And again, we're leery of downtrends. We want to try to buy uptrends if we can. Things change a little right here, though. All right. After we get to this next point, we have a low here. And this is looky there, higher low. Just like it was back here. You remember that lower low and this higher low? Same thing here. Lower low, higher low. We need one more piece. We need that higher high. All right. And I know it's spelled wrong, but if it's spelled wrong, you'll remember it forever. Now we go from this lower higher low here. We keep looking to the right. And what do we get? We get another reversal. But for the first time, for the very first time since we've been reading this entire asset, you had a lower high, and now you have a very small but higher high. And what does this tell us? Well, spell it right, Keith. That tells us that, if we remember, higher lows, higher highs, higher low, higher high, you just found your very first uptrend in the history of this asset, which is so far August 13, January 17, almost 4 years old. It took 4 years for this thing to turn into an uptrend. That's a very, very, very long time. And for what it's worth, you could have just sat on the sideline the entire time and saved stable coins, bought stable coins on an exchange, and waited and waited and waited and found this opportunity to buy down here, rather than constantly buying and buying and buying and watching every time you buy lose value over 4 years. This is why it's so important. All right. This is why charting is so important, because we've just learned now how to identify a trend and how to save money just like we make money. We've learned that in a downtrend, it's not worth sitting in the asset and constantly buying more and more and more and more, because every time we buy, it goes lower, right? We don't want to do that. We want our money to make money for us, not lose money. So in a downtrend, we simply don't buy. We look for a different place, all right? We wait and we wait and we wait till we get what we want. And once we get what we want, then we react. All right, headphones off. So that's what I wanted to cover on trend identification. We're going to go even farther on the next video, take it another step farther with trend lines, and we're going to use the other part of the candles instead of the candle bodies. We'll use the candle wicks to get even tighter on our identification. We'll show you how to confirm whether or not you have an uptrend or a downtrend, because you want to make sure here. You don't want to guess. And then we'll show you down lower and lower and lower on time frames how close you can get on the exact spot to buy. So see you then next video. Peace.